Thank you, John. Hello. Is it still morning? Good morning, if it still is. Uh, as she said, my name's Harry Graves. I'm with Browning and Graves. My business partner, Jeremy Browning, is sitting in here, so I wanted y'all to know who he is. And for the next little bit, I've got about 20 slides, and we'll move through them pretty rapidly. You can stop me, and you can ask a question anytime you want. We're going to be talking about the basics of long-term care is what we're going to do. And, or you can wait till the end and we'll field all the questions at the end if you would like. This little book that I laid in front of you is very simply generic information. It doesn't apply to any insurance company. It doesn't apply to any type of plan. It's just basic long-term care information for educational purposes is what it is. So you're welcome to take that. We have more of these if you need one or two of them. I have some extra ones. I'll be glad to give you that today. But that's what that's for when you leave, for you to take it with you. I have a business card in the front of it. If you have questions, you're welcome to call on us. So, okay, we're going to get started. What we're going to try to do today is we're going to talk about these objectives. What is long-term care? What are the different ways to pay for that care? When is long-term care needed? When can you receive care? What do you want? Who do you want to provide care? A very big question. How will the care be paid for? And then why do you need a written strategy for long-term care? So I'm going to try to touch those things as we move through this. Most of us hope that we will live a nice, comfortable, long life. And in our practice here outside of what we do for the hospital, we deal with income planning and helping people when they get ready to retire. And the subject of this long-term care always comes up because most people, what they want to do is they want to be able to spend time with their family. They may volunteer to come to the hospital and work or to a church and work. They want to enjoy their hobbies. But unfortunately, what we see a lot of times is a health event, and we'll get into what those are, will come along and change that for you. Okay, what is long-term care? It's the assistance or supervision that you may need when you lose your activities of daily living. I'm going to get to what those are, but most 99% of the time, the loss of two of those activities of daily living that can be certified by your doc will qualify you for long-term care assistance if you have it and if you have purchased it on the outside. That can come due to a chronic illness, due to disability, due to a car wreck. You can be 50 years of age, you can be 70, 75, 80 years of age. It doesn't, the long-term care world doesn't really discriminate to us as far as age goes. Okay, activities of daily living. Here's what they are: dressing, eating, bathing, toileting, transferring, and continence. Of course, continence is control of your bowels and your kidneys. And then there's one other one that is a severe cognitive event, Alzheimer's and dementia. So I can tell you from personal experience that in the dementia world, I lost my father 3 years ago due to that, and he had lost all of these because of that subject. But when you have lost two of these that can be certified by your doc, then if you have long-term care coverage of some kind, and we'll get into the different kinds here in just a little bit, then you would be qualifying to be able to call on that product or that benefit after certain waiting periods. Most of the time, that's 90 days. And again, stop me if you want to ask a question, or we'll wait till the end. Okay. Important long-term care questions. Where are long-term care services provided? The home, in the community, in assisted living, or in a full-blown nursing home. And we'll talk a little more about those as we go along. What effect could long-term care have on my family and my retirement strategy? If you don't have it and you're paying for it yourself, and Jeremy and I deal with this quite often, then, and we'll get into the expenses of that in a little bit, it's going to affect your retirement unless you're a very wealthy person. What could it cost? The cost of care, and I have some statistics on that, we see it costing anywhere from $2,500 a month all the way up to $7,500, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. Depends on where you are, what's wrong with you, and what's happened to you as to what those costs can be. What are your options if you need to pay for long-term care? Most of the time, there are really about 3 different products that you can attach long-term care to. You can attach it to a long-term care policy. And we don't sell many of those anymore because one of the biggest complaints that we had and still have in that arena is, Harry, I buy something from you that has and we'll just assume $100 a day benefit. I pay for it for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years. It goes up on me 2 or 3 different times, and then I pass away and I never call on it. They have my money, the insurance company, and I have nothing. And that's very true. And that's one of the biggest pushbacks that we've had over the years was because of that. You can also tie a long-term care benefit to a life insurance policy, and you can tie it to an annuity. And you can endorse those contracts to advance the death benefit to you while you are alive. And in the annuity world, you're advancing, and a lot of those annuities allow you to access those benefits without any surrender charges or anything like that. You may have to pay tax. It depends on the type of annuity you have. So those are how you can pay for it, or you can pay for it right off the hip. You can write a check if you want to. Okay. Where is long-term care provided? As I said before, it can be in a nursing home, in an assisted living facility. It can even be in your home. Most people tell us that they want to stay home as long as they can. Now, there are some challenges to that when that comes along. I can tell you most of our homes are not equipped for lifts, wheelchairs, getting in and out of bedrooms, getting into bathrooms, getting up the steps, down the steps, that type of stuff. So it can be provided at home, but those are challenges. It can, in assisted living facilities or in nursing homes is where we would see most of it provided. Okay, the reality of living longer. Living a long life is more than a reality, so if you have longevity in your family, and Jeremy and I, when we're talking to people, we will ask, tell me how old your mom and dad are, and tell me how old your grandmother and your granddaddy were on both sides of the fence. And a lot of times that will tell us the longevity that you're going to have in your family, and we use that type of information in planning. Living longer does not always, it's not always, I can't say that word, synonymous, I think I finally did, with living better. The longer we live, the more likely it is that at some point in time, we will need long-term care help. You'll see a slide in a minute about the statistics on that. Who will care for me when I do need long-term care? How will the care be paid for? And what impact will it have on my family? In many instances, I'll make this comment about that part of the slide. In many instances, a long-term caregiving by a caregiver, if you're not careful, be that a parent, a child, a grandparent, a friend, whoever that may be, you will find that the caregiver will actually go down quicker than the person being cared for, depending on how long that process is. Okay, what is your plan? Do you have a written strategy? We encourage people to make a plan and write it down so that you know you can tell your daughter, your uncles, your aunt, your son, your cousins, your neighbor with no kin to you, whoever is going to care for you, if you can give them a written strategy of how you want to do this, how you're going to pay for it. I have this much in savings, I'm going to pay for it. I have this much in this policy, and I have this much available in this policy, and here's where they are. And if it's your children, many times you need to make sure you have your powers of attorney and your wills in place so that they aren't trying to go out and get the ability to do that if you haven't. Okay. Support can come from family, friends, and others, like we talked about. Churches, Meals on Wheels, we see that. Where does the money come from? Current income, cash savings, retirement savings, other assets. We see people that sell land, sell parts of farms, sell homes, that type stuff, to raise the money when they don't have long-term care in place. All right, some statistics. Am I going too fast? Anybody? Okay. At least 70% of us, those of us that are getting close to that magic age of 65 and older, will need some sort of long-term care services and support. These stats that I'm giving you, you can see at the bottom the reference there where it's coming from. You also see the name of this insurance company right here. That's where a lot of this information I got when I started looking for the right presentation to give you general information where it came from. And most of this relates back to the years 2015 and 2016, based on Genworth's experience in the market, their claims experience, their sales experience, and so forth. If you have the average length of a long-term care claim lasting longer than 1 year, if you've been in a claim situation for 1 year, on average, you're going to last 3.9 years. Average lifespan after Alzheimer's disease has been diagnosed if you're over 65 years of age. My dad lasted 3 years. That one's 4 to 8 years. These are averages. I had a grandmother that was in a nursing home for 13 years. And we talk to people all the time that have had loved ones that has been anywhere from, they lived 6 months, and some of them have been in there 13, 14 years, and they're still there. So there really is no rhyme or reason to the length of time. The national median costs. These are annual numbers, and I also have the Tennessee, I have it for Tennessee also. You will see that in-home care, 44 hours per week for a licensed home health aide. That's about 6 hours, about 6.2, 6.3 hours per day of actually paying for some help there. That $45,760 in the state of Tennessee, it averages about $41,184 if you're using someone for 44 hours a week. If you go back and take your calculator, because we help people do this, that say, well, I'm going to hire somebody to come 24 hours a day. Okay? What are you going to pay them? Well, I can hire somebody for $12 an hour. Okay, 12 times 24 times 365 days a year, multiply that out, and you'll see how expensive it can be to stay at home. Assisted living, $43,200. In the state of Tennessee, it's actually just a little bit more than that, $45,360. And I got these figures from the website that they provide. A nursing home with a private room, national average $91,250. Private room in the state of Tennessee is about $75,000 annually. Nursing home semi-private room, $80,000 a year. Semi-private room in the state of Tennessee averages about $69,000. Now, if you'll think about it, if you live inside Memphis, if you live inside Nashville, if you live inside Chattanooga, you're in a big city, the costs are going to move up on you a little bit. It'd be like living in the state of Tennessee and then moving to New York. And I can tell you, in New York, it's a lot higher than it is here. So understand that these are very simply averages. Okay. A lot of folks might say that I'm going to get my kids to take care of me. We ask people that. They have from 1 child to 10. And it is amazing the conversations that Jeremy and I have with these people about who's going to care for me and who is not. And believe it or not, Mom and Dad pretty well know. They know who probably will, and they know who probably won't. If you say your spouse is going to take care of you, well, most of the time, that's where it starts if you're married. But what really happens to that spouse, let's just say he or she's working. We see anywhere from 5 to 15 to 20 hours a week sometimes that they lose at their job. Sometimes their job becomes in jeopardy because of that. So the toll that it takes on the caregiver, once again, if you will go back and remember what I said at the beginning, many times without having the financial wherewithal through your own money and through some sort of long-term care benefit to help pay the bill, the caregiver will suffer more and go down quicker than the person being cared for. It's more really about your family and your friends than it is about you and who you're going to have care for you. Some funding options, private options and family support. Public programs, we'll get to that one in just a minute. Self-funding, you can just pay it right off the hip, or you can have some help through some sort of long-term care contract or benefit. When you're looking at family and private support, the consideration, I'm going to go back to this caregiver thing one more time. The time and the ability, the proximity of how close that person or that family member is to you, and their physical, financial, and their emotional impact that's going to be on them, you need to take that into account. Let's talk about the physical thing for a minute. If you cannot get up and move around and you have to be lifted, and you have to be put in a wheelchair, and you have to be carried to the bathroom, and you have to be lifted and put in the shower and all that stuff. If we see a lot of spouses on both sides of the fence, male and female, that are just not physically strong enough to do that without going out and getting the necessary equipment in your home if that's what you're going to do. Now, in the facility side of things, in the assisted living and in the nursing home, most of the time they have that pretty well taken care of. And the things that y'all see in this hospital, when we talk to people from hospitals, about long-term care. Most of the time, they have seen very real examples of that, and they understand that very well. Let's talk about Medicare and Medicaid. That's part of the public programs that I just mentioned. On average, in the Medicare world, when you go into the hospital, as long as you've been in a hospital for and admitted, you can't be there for observation. That doesn't count based on what we have seen. You're admitted for a minimum of 3 days. You've had a stroke. You've had some sort of neurological event. You've had a heart attack. Whatever has happened to you. As long as you've been there 3 days, when you come out of the hospital, you can normally go to skilled nursing care. And Medicare is tightening those definitions all the time. Most of the time they move you to a skilled nursing care facility. They'll pay 100%, Medicare will, of the first 20 days. After that, up to 100 days, Medicare will pay 80% of the bill, and either your health insurance or your Medicare supplement, or depending on where you are in life, will pay that other 20%. When you stop, and we've seen this, when you stop improving, they can actually cut that 100 days a little shorter, and we've seen them do that in the past. Medicaid contributes to long-term care, but requires the recipients to use their income to pay for care and spend down most of their assets to qualify. Many times we have people walk into our office and sit down and go, "Harry, so-and-so has had a stroke. We're going to have to bring them home, and at this time, it looks like it's going to cost us X to do that. What do we do to try to protect the assets that mom or dad or grandmother or granddaddy, whoever the case is, what do we do to protect those assets?" Well, by then, we call that 11th hour planning is what we call that. You have to, most of the time, we're going to lead you to an elder care attorney, and then that person will go through with you what your options are. And most of the times, those are not, we don't see very many people enjoying the fact of what they have to do to protect those, if they can. Self-funding, I've talked about that. Take that $12 a day, an hour, that we talked about earlier to have someone come into the home, multiply it times 24 times 365. Move it up to $15. I think most home health care agencies are going to charge you $18 or $20 an hour to do that. So take those different numbers, multiply them times 24 or 12 hours a day if you're going to have other help that you don't have to pay, and just come up with the expense factors, and you can see how expensive that's going to be. Most of the time, you can take that. If you have mutual funds, you can take money from that. If you have managed money, you can take money from that. Bonds, money markets, stocks, even if you have life insurance policies that have cash value in them, you can go after that in the self-funding arena. There are those things that I just got through telling you about. Long-term care solutions. And now what I'm talking about here is something other than self-pay. If you're looking for how do we attack this problem. Traditional long-term care insurance, let's go back to what I said about that when we first started talking. The biggest pushback on that is I buy it, I qualify for it, I keep it for a long time, it goes up on me a time or two or three, and then I pass away, I've spent all that money, and my family has nothing. The linked benefit products and the accelerated benefit rider for long-term care services products, mainly what they're talking about there is using a life insurance policy or an annuity to attach the long-term care to it. Probably 95, 96, 97% of the time, when we help families attack this problem and come up with a solution, this day and time, we are using a life insurance policy of some kind to attach the long-term care benefit to it. The reason that we do that is that it doesn't, whether you ever use it for long-term care or not, someone in your family is going to get the money. You will either draw that death benefit when you lose those 2 activities of daily living or more that we talked about. You will draw that death benefit to pay for your care, and that is a tax-free event when that occurs. Or if you pass away, your beneficiaries are going to get the money that you've paid for it. And there are, I guess we probably represent 30 different insurance companies, which most of them have about 5 or 6 different ways you can do this. So there's probably 100 different ways that you can actually structure this. Each family that we talk to, we find that they're very unique in who's going to help, who's not going to help, how much money do I have, where are my assets, how are they positioned, how many IRAs do I have, how many money markets do I have, how many non-taxable accounts do I have. All of that stuff has to come into play when you start picking these linked benefits and these accelerated benefit riders. You attach those things to life insurance, and while you are alive, you can advance those benefits to yourself when you lose those 2 activities of daily living. You can also do that with annuities too. There's the main difference between the two is that in the life insurance world, if the money you contribute, you get some leverage because whatever the death benefit is where the long-term care benefit is derived from. For example, if you have a $200,000 death benefit and they will let you draw 2% per month of the face amount, 2% of $200,000, $4,000. Everybody with me on how that works on average? When we first sit down with someone, if they are interested in long-term care, here are the things that we get them to start considering. And let me tell you this, most of the time, it takes anywhere from 2 to 5 meetings before we land on what you want to try to do. This is very seldom sit down and talk for 15 minutes and here's what I want to do and there's my solution. That just happens very, very, very rarely. The benefit amount, in other words, how much money a month, how much help do you want? You want $2,000 a month of help? $3,000, $4,000, $5,000? Harry, I want to pay for about half of it through insurance, and then I'll pay the other half off my hip. If that's what you decide to do, we're going to ask you to come up with that amount. The benefit period is how long do you want it to last? You want it to last for 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, for life? Of course, the longer that lasts, what do you think that does to the price? It's more expensive, okay? The elimination period, most of the time, and it's got the word deductible there, most of the time, the people that we assist wait 90 days. In other words, they're willing to pay for the first 90 days as long as they feel like they've got some help coming out there in the 120th day, in the 4th month. Home care, we always have conversations about that. Yeah, I won't stay home as long as I can. Okay? Then that usually affects those top 3, and we're usually pushing them up a little bit more, the values up, than where we started from. Inflation, if we write a policy on anyone in this room, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 years before you call on it. What's these costs, these average costs that I showed you earlier? Are they going to be more in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, or are they going to be less? So we will have a conversation with you about the inflation and whether you want to put an inflation factor on it to try to keep up with that. Of course, then your age and your gender and your health are going to affect that quite a bit. Okay, this is my last slide with you. Your next step is, hopefully, we have prompted you to at least think. Talk to your significant other or your friend, or you can go home and talk to your dog if you'd like to. But whoever you want to talk to, and start talking about this subject, because it is a process to come up with this information, what you think you might want in the way of help. And when Jeremy and I understand what you think you want, then we go find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 solutions for that and show you how much that costs. And if the sticker shock scares you, then we adjust it either up or down based on what you tell us that you want to do. I will tell you this, that here in the hospital, Jeremy and I are responsible for a lot of the voluntary benefits that are here. The all-state coverages, the cancer, the accident, critical illness, and we're also responsible for the combined life insurance long-term care benefit that was here for the first time last open enrollment. That product is a life insurance policy that you attach long-term care to. And it pays out 4% of whatever the face amount is when you've lost 2 of those activities of daily living, and it will pay that for 50 months. That's 4 years and 2 months. And the reason that product is structured like that, because when you look at these averages that we talked about, other than in the Alzheimer's area, the life expectancy was like 4 to 8 years. So we're at the 4.2. We're on the low end of that average. But having some help, whether it's that, whether it's sitting down and talking to us individually, having some help will help your assets last much longer than they will without the help. That's what we see. Now, I'm going to be quiet for a minute, and I welcome any question, any comment. I will try my best to answer whatever question anyone might have. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.